what's up? So in these next 3 videos, Katie and I put together kind of a mini-series that breaks down what a training year looks like for a general collegiate soccer player. So our first video will be about pre and prep season kind of rolled into one. And then the second video will talk about all the differences of in-season. And then the final video in the series is going to go over the differences that you'll see in post-season. And these differences will cover things from strength training to conditioning, the differences in recovery and nutrition that might be needed. So it's all things that a strength and conditioning coach, a sport coach, or even a player should be thinking about throughout the year. Alright, so this will be video 1 in this 3 video series, and it's going to talk about preseason and prep season. They're basically the same thing. Some people call them pre, some people call it prep. It's pretty much the same extended season generally for a collegiate soccer player if the season is in the fall like it usually is. Prep is considered in the spring, and then a lot of players will call preseason that summertime that they have away from school, doing training, doing conditioning and strength on their own generally.
So the main focus of preseason is to prepare the players for practices and games come fall. And this can be achieved in various ways, but an increased focus on strength and power development in lifting and conditioning is staple for many coaches. Utilizing sport-specific exercises that place an emphasis on quick, strong movements from a base position are main points athletes can expect, as well as some accessory work to maintain an overall balance to the body. This video will cover some of the main lifts that can be used to achieve this goal, as well as conditioning ideas that fit the same theme of power and strength.
So preseason is broken down into 2 different phases of training. The first phase is general preparation, where athletes are looking to just build that base strength that they'll use in all of their weightlifting training, in their conditioning, in their sport-specific training, like at practices. And then the second is specific preparation, which is when athletes are really diving into the details of the strength they need for their movements in sport. And remember, not all programs are going to look the same. This mini-series just creates an example of a potential outline a coach might use for their programming. So one basic programming schedule that you might see is something that's split into 3 different blocks. The first one's going to be strength endurance. The second is strength. And then the third, which is the closest to that in-season time, is strength power. So to break that down, strength endurance, the goal of that is to increase the amount of time that muscles can be under tension without decreasing their efficiency. So that's just how long can you be moving the weight, how long can you be producing the force. With the strength phase, the goal there is really just to increase overall force able to be produced. And then strength power is going to be more sport specific, and the goal there is to increase the ability to produce as much of that force, as much as that strength, as fast as possible. And that force produced with speed is what is known as power. Just because there's different goals and different phases of training doesn't mean you have to use different exercises for each one to achieve these goals. You can just use variations of the same few exercises that you've taught the athletes already, so they already know what they're doing, just switching up little things like tempo, weight obviously, any sport-specific variation in stance and grip, even things like unilateral, bilateral movements, single leg, both legs, single arm, things like that. One great exercise to start with is the squat. It has a lot of variations to it, and here we see Katie showing us the back squat with a barbell. It's useful for many different sports and starts to build that base of strength used in a lot of different movements. One variation that's specifically useful for soccer players is the split squat. Instead of having both feet equidistant apart underneath them for the base of strength, the staggered stance is more realistic to the position that a soccer player might find themselves in during a game when they have their need for their power and their force. Lunges are often utilized as a similar form of variation, like the split squats. By working these single-leg focused exercises, athletes gain applicable balance and unilateral strength that they can use then in games. And different variations of the lunge, like forward lunge, backwards lunge, lateral lunge, all help the athlete work through different planes of motion. One popular deadlift variation used by soccer athletes is what's known as the RDL, short for Romanian deadlift. The primary goal of RDLs is to use your posterior chain, and more specifically, your hamstrings, to be the source of force. A great variation of an RDL is a single leg RDL. These require greater balance than a double leg RDL, and put even more tension on one specific hamstring at a time. So you can tell with different sports, you do different variations, obviously, especially even within sports, you can change it up for positions. So like goalkeepers are going to do a lot more lateral movements, a lot more jumping movements, and somebody that's maybe a wing midfielder does a lot more linear running. So just knowing your athlete and knowing their position can help you with programming.